All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Sani. I'm excited to be here with you. I see some people, joining from Atlanta, from different places. I don't think it's raining here yet in Nashville, but you might have our rain already, Jennifer, for what's going on. And we've got someone from Canada. So welcome, everyone. We're excited to be here with you today. We're going to do something that I think is just really fun. It's perfect for summer because we are going to make some little cards. I don't know if you've ever done this, but this is my so much fun card. I did this morning. It's kind of a cute little card, fun to make, easy to make. So for any of you who have kids, grandkids home from the basically from school, sit them down at a sewing machine. It is so really cool. So here's another little one that just says summertime. What I'm going to do is I am going to talk with you really just about how you work with sewing on paper, basically, is what we're doing. So when you sew on paper, it is pretty important. And I'm going to get on the machine. Today I'm using actually our heavy duty, the 6700C, so a computer machine. You can really do this with any sewing machine. The more decorative stitches you have, the more fun you can kind of have. But you can, just do it with just basic stitches too. So, but the 6700C has some great stuff. We're going to do a little programming, that sort of thing. But when you start, it is important that you do use a smaller needle. So if you're taking notes as we're going along, you really want to use a smaller needle. I would not use a needle any larger than an 8012. And that's the size that I'm using today. So an 8012 universal needle works great for paper. And when you're doing that, the other thing to remember is paper will dull your fabric, or excuse me, will dull your needle, unlike as much fabric. So why I say that is the minute I get done today, I'm going to take this needle out and throw it away. Because guess what? After you make a few cards, you're not going to want to use it when you're sewing fabric. So again, size 8012 needle. You can use any threads. So I'm using a rayon thread today. Some people like cotton threads, so you can use different threads. I will tell you, I'm just gonna do, I've got a basket of threads over here that I just have. And so it's just kind of fun. Choose some fun colors. There's nothing with doing this that, again, is hard. It's just you need to know a few things. So also, that being said, with the thread, I'm using just a white bobbin thread. So you don't have to match the bobbin and top in this case, because we're not making a garment or anything like that. So you're just going to mess around with your threads, have a good needle. So, and so that I see that someone asked about paper thickness, that sort of thing. What I did, if this is actually, I would call this like a little scrap buster project, right? You got a lot of fabrics at home, you got some threads maybe at home, but Michaels has some beautiful cards. They've got cards that have ombre on them. The card weight is not that super important. I've got a couple different cards here that you can, that use. I don't know the gram weight. So to your question, I would say it's just a normal card stock. It's nothing that I found, I'm just using cards that I would use for other things. So you don't have to get like anything special. You just have to get a pretty card. Okay, so there are lots of different ones, again, that Michaels has. I wish I knew. I can't even hazard a guess, right, to tell you what paper, how many grams or, what size, but it is just, I would say, just your normal cardstock. You don't want to get super heavy, and you don't want it to be like typing paper because that's too light. Okay, so just a normal cardstock size. So kind of those things being said, what I'm going to do is I am going to switch over to my machine, and I want to show you, I'm going to take you through a few things to get started. So with my, again, as I mentioned, this is the Singer Heavy Duty 6700C. What I want to do is I'm going to just, you can kind of see here, when you are working with paper, I just did a straight stitch, a zigzag stitch, a different zigzag stitch. When you're working with paper, the stitch length, normal stitch length for sewing in a straight stitch is 2.5. I always like to take it just a little bit longer, up to 3, when I'm doing a straight stitch. For a zigzag stitch, so if I just choose a zigzag stitch, 5.0 is the width, 2.0 is the length. That's probably a pretty good size. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew on another little piece of paper here. And there are a couple things when you are sewing with paper. So I'm going to try and just zoom in slightly for you. I don't want to go too close, but I recommend highly that you practice what you're doing. I am just using regular, a little bit heavier cardstock paper. And when I get done, it is quite important that you don't pull heavily. You don't do anything like that. And you just pull out. When this perforates this on the back, can you guys, there we go. You can see that. My tension is just fine for this. But let's say at this moment in time, I do not like that stitch, and I've sewn it on the card that I am using. Well, when using paper, let's say I take this out, so I'm just using a seam ripper. I'm going to take that out, take this out. Once you stitch on this, it's done. Can you all see? Hopefully you can see. That is perforated. You can do nothing with that unless you like the holes in it, right? So it is super important. Thank you for letting me know you can see, Elsa. You want to practice, in other words. So again, once that's stitched on paper, you're done. You can do nothing else. So I think that's really important. Something else with your stitches. So I'm going back. This was my little practice card, right? So I have a little practice card. Something else you could do with this is like put your stitch number and your stitch length and width, above something, so you know what that is. So yeah, you probably could do some really cool things with the holes, that's for sure. And Jennifer, I love that you say pretend, because I have pretended many times in my life. But the other piece to my little puzzle here is if I trim, so yep, you can see I'm down here. If I just simply trim off and up there at the top, let me zoom out just a little. Excuse me here. If I trim this, it could easily come out. So you could pull on it, see how it's starting to pull away, and of course, you don't want that to happen on your card. So I will tell you guys, we got to go back to old school, and I'm going to zoom in, and hopefully you'll be able to see this. You got to go back to old school. And when I say old school, I mean, you are truly going to take your bobbin thread. You can see that little loop. I'm going to take the top thread to the bottom, and I'm going to tie this in a little knot. Because if you don't do that, your threads start to pull out and fray, and then your decoration of holes gets a little bit bigger. So always, when you finish, take this to the back and tie a little knot. And it's just an overhand knot, just right. So it is just a regular overhand knot, just so those won't pull out for you. So again, super important you do that. So A lot of us with different machines, we have a little tie off, right? So if I zoom out just a little, you know, I can tie off, but that's not good enough. You really have to pull it to the back, okay? So it is kind of, again, where we are working with just different threads, different stitches, different things like that. The other thing why I did this specifically, all right, is if you have stitches that, these are called satin stitches. They're stitches that are really kind of close together with my stitching. Satin stitches are not real great for working with paper. Okay, so not real great for working with paper. And the reason why, and I tried to not push this through, but once you perforate that, the stitch itself, and you see how the stitch itself is coming through, so you're creating holes in your card. You'll hopefully see that a little bit. Yeah, you can, oh, it's just, actually, here's what I'll do. There we go. Can you see how there's a little hole? And Carly, thanks. Everyone, I never know if I'm showing the right thing for you guys, but see how, so basically what's going on is this piece is just pulling out of the card. And so it's not good. So anything that's a satin stitch like this, okay, so that's a satin stitch like this, you really don't want to use that as a decorative stitch. So over here, so on these, you can see how I used a little bit, stitches a little bit longer. I even threw some ribbon in a stitch that can go over the top of that. All of these are super fun to use, but basically these types of stitches don't use. All right, so let me come back.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
Someone asked, can you hand sew them? And if so, what's quicker, hand sewing or machine sewing?
Well, you certainly can hand sew this. We talk about this as being kind of handcrafted versus truly hand sewn. Certainly you can hand sew if that is your joy. When you're using a when you're using a machine, it is just going to be quicker. And you probably are going to have a little bit more decoration options. I am not a great hand sewist. I am not consistent. So the machine helps me out with that. All right. And Joe, I see the satin stitch is a satin stitch. So let me try and do something here. And what I'm going to try and do is not make you too woozy. And I'm going to come down a little bit here. And if I just made you super woozy, I'm sorry. So there we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out, these are the decorative stitches that are on our machine. And the satin stitch here, see all of these that look like filled in and darker? Those are all what are called satin stitches. So they're stitches that are filled in, and that's what, you know, this one, number 27, that's what I had here. So all of these are filled in stitches. Anything that you see on your machine that is filled in like that, you do not want to use those on paper. All right, you don't want to use those on paper, because if you do, then you're going to get that perforated unless you want that 3D effect, right? So unless you want that 3D effect. Okay, so hopefully that answers that question for you. So the satin stitch is a style of stitch, I guess is what I would really say, is it is a style of stitch. All right, so I'm gonna come here. Sorry, I'm looking away for just a minute. So at this point, what I want to do is we're going to talk. So I'm going to come back here for a minute. So really, this is unlimited. And this is where I kind of was thinking like, gosh, summertime, kids, grandkids, give them you know, you can give them a little card and say, okay, we're gonna make our cards today. We're gonna make this for Father's Day or for a birthday, or we were even talking ahead of time, Christmas time. You could start your Christmas card list already. So with that being said, when I did this little card here, I really fell in love, if you can see that, I really fell in love with the little strawberries. And the strawberries themselves were in some fabrics that I had gotten from Michaels. So I just wanted to take out a little bit of that fabric. So we call this, are there any quilters out there today? Do we have any quilters? Because as a quilter, basically we call this fussy cutting. So you kind of come in here and you decide what part of the fabric you want. So I decided this time I want a little more orange part of my strawberry. And then it's like, okay, so how far do I want that sort of thing? How much am I gonna show? Do I want the little, any of the little hearts? So this is the fun part with kids and grandkids. It's like, okay, well, depending upon age, be careful of the scissors. We know that they've got to be a little careful of that. And then what I also did is I just frayed out the edges. So I didn't even, you know, that's the fun time, is now you can fray out your edges. Just do, you know, whatever you want. When I'm doing something like this, and let's say I want a decorative stitch on it or something like, you know, decorative stitch, or to sew it down, this is where, and I don't know that I wrote this in the write-up, guys, but tearaway stabilizer, if you are an embroiderer, if you do a lot of decorative stitching, one of the cool things about tearaway stabilizer is it's going to hold my stitches nice and flat. So if I put this on here, it's going to hold it nice and flat. But then I liked the look so much, I just tore around it. So I saw part of the stabilizer on my card. So it's just kind of fun that way. So you can do just really anything you want to do. This is the fun part, creative part. Kids can just go, you know, just go crazy. So let's come back here to my machine. I'm going to go to that zigzag stitch, but this time I'm going to take my zigzag stitch and make it smaller. And the reason why I can make it smaller, everyone, is because I'm sewing on stabilizer, not on the actual card itself. Okay, so, and let's zoom in a little bit so you can see this. All right, so I'm just going to get started here, and just a little, kind of a really small zigzag stitch. One of the things about our Singer 6700C, so this particular machine that I'm using, is we have something that is called a needle down button. If your machine has this, this is a great time to engage it, because notice every time I stop sewing, it's going to stop with a needle down. So once I have that, I'm just lifting my presser foot a little bit here. So a little bit more. You kind of got to let yourself take your time as you're going along. And just keep on going. And all I'm going to do is I'm making the strawberry be sewn right on the stabilizer. And just continue around. I had to stop talking, everyone, because I'm concentrating really super hard right now. Better lift this up just a little bit. It's right there. See where I'm coming back around here. There we go. All right. And now take that out. So if you guys can see there, I just put that on the stabilizer. I'm not going to do this to save time because often when I am tying those knots, it always takes a little bit longer for me. So I'm not going to tie my knot, but I normally would. I'm going to get in and just trim it close so you can see that. But now this is kind of cool in that I'm just going to take the tear away and just kind of tear around a little bit. And it doesn't have to be perfect. And you can have it show as much or as little as you want. As I do that. And there's one of my pieces for my little card. And so then all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, do I want it there? Do I want it turned? Do I want it on the inside? Wherever I want that, I can place that. And that's the first step. So again, fun, really super easy, that sort of thing to work with. I'm just going to go back to a straight stitch. Because I also had this fun fabric from Michael's. So this little checkerboard fabric. And what I want to share with you is, again, some of us have more advanced machines than others. So with this one, all I'm going to do is I'm going to straight stitch. But I'm using what is called a straight stretch stitch. Let me scoot over here. It's the heavier stretch stitch right here. So the heavier straight stretch stitch, that guy. And basically this will make the stitch look heavier, right? So that's what this one is it's a little bit heavier than a normal straight stitch. And all I'm going to do is get started. And it might help if you're seeing me start. So let that tie off for me there. And so all I'm going to do, and I won't make you guys sit through all of this, but see what I did here is all I did is on a regular piece of fabric, I made my own checkerboard and then used some decorative stitches to hook that up to the card. So as you're seeing, there's really nothing, as long as you practice and make sure you've got the right stitch set up, okay? So as long as you have that step set up, you're good to, you're good to go. You can do, again, just basically whatever you want to do. Now, this is where, so there, I'm just going to put this on this pink card today. So I'm going to put this on the pink card. What I am going to do though, is I am going to use this same straight stitch to actually sew. So I'm going to sew this patch to the card. Just with a straight stitch. All right. So I'm going to put one side on. So there you go. So I did that one. I'm going to do the next side as I go along here. Didn't quite go far enough. I need one more stitch. Here we go. All right, so there we go. And again, just that little bit of stabilizer that I left around it just adds a little bit of interest. If you do have decorative stitches on your machine, with this one, so I want you to, that one there, everybody, this is a satin stitch, but I satin stitched it on the fabric, not on the card. So by stitching the satin on a piece of fabric, then I can incorporate it into the card. So I hope that makes sense. So I did that first, and then I actually, and I'm so much not a glue stick person, but I know you guys have glue at home. I did glue this together, so it is something that is kind of that, you know, in a pinch, if you're not sewing it on the card, go ahead and you can just glue it right together with that. So I'm just starting to build my little card here. So I'm starting to build my card. I really kind of fell in love when I was practicing. I did fall in love with one of my decorative stitches. It was a simple one. I have to remember where it was. It is, oh, doggone it. Sorry, I can't remember where it is. It might be just right on the front. Nope, it's not right on the front either. I wanted to show you how I did that ribbon because I think that ribbon is a really nice addition. And I'm just going to put a little bit of ribbon down in here. And so there it is. It's in. So I'm going to go over to my machine here. It is in menu 3. So I went to menu 3 and it is stitch 24. So by doing that, it's all set up. It is not a satin stitch. So I want to just come down so you can see. This is the stitch right here. So again, it's not one of those heavy stitches. It's not a satin stitch. So now let's come back up. And again, you can sew this however you want to sew it. You can put it wherever you want to put it. I'm actually going to make it a straight line, or at least attempt. So I'm going to attempt to make this a pretty straight line down the middle of my presser foot with this ribbon. Not so straight. There we go. My ribbon's going to wander a little bit. And I'm just going to finish that like that. And this way you can see the ribbon's kind of hanging off the bottom and the top. You could put a little bead there. You could do whatever you wanted to with it. So you've got, it almost looks like a little bookmark is what it kind of looks like to me. And now the next step is just to add whatever, I call it a sentiment. I'm going to come back here. But there you can see it's just kind of a cute little thing. You can tie a little overhand knot. You could put a little, like I said, a little bead on the ribbon. You could do all sorts of things. I don't think these cards would fit through the mail very well though. So you got to be a little careful with that. If you are going to mail it, you have to think a little bit about that. All right. Yeah, I see someone, rickrack would be great. You can, you know, I just started hunting in my stash. This is a real pretty, you know, braided sort of thing. We've got the, you know, you've got laces, you've got just whatever. I fell in love with the little pom-poms this morning, like someone said earlier. It's really kind of fun that you could, pom-poms go with everything, right? So you can just throw pom-poms on, you know, that sort of thing. So, and you know what, Joe, if you're saying about the mail, um, uh, the mail, I've not tried mailing these. I'm sure you could, if you could fit it. I don't know that I could fit with pom-poms or like beads, but otherwise you certainly could mail it, I think. You could, you just have to be aware that it might be a heavier weight, so you might have to go to the post office, right? Or very padded envelope, whatever you know, however you would get it to someone for that. So, all right. So if you're, what I would say is now, I'm just gonna program in a little bit about summer fun, or again, it could be Father's Day, it could be, you know, happy holidays, whatever you want to say. When you are done kind of decorating, I highly recommend that before you sew your letters on the card. So before you sew your letters on the card, practice it. And when I say practice it, I was like, okay, so I did so much fun, and I put a little exclamation mark at the end of the word fun. That, honestly, that didn't turn out very nicely on the paper. It almost like pushed it all the way through. It didn't look like I wanted it to. So that was where I practiced. I said, nope, don't like that. So in my final card, I didn't put that. It looks nicer to me there than it did with that exclamation mark, right? So those are the things you're going, and I see someone said spell check. That is exactly right, because when we're putting in letters, what we often end up doing is you're putting in like number 24 is letter, you know, C, and number 17 is letter A, or whatever it is. So that didn't make much logical sense, but you know what I mean. So I have put in wrong letters. And guess what? I did not practice. And then it ended up going on a card. And I'm like, well, guess what? I get to start over now, because that time the little perforated holes did not, it wasn't going to work for me, right? So it is really good if you do that spell check. So let's come back. I'm going to zoom out for a minute. So I'm going to zoom back out, and let's come back over here. And all I'm going to do, again, if your machine does not have something that you can program, guess what? You can handwrite those sentiments. You can, and a lot of times it's beautiful to do that anyway. So I'm just going to erase what I had in there. And because I am going to have, I'm going to do the summer fun this time instead of summertime, but I'm going to do it in two different places. I'm going to do one up and one down. So that being said, I'm going to write it in two separate programs. So let's start. And number 29 is the letter S. And I'm not going to tell you what every letter is here. I'm hopefully, though, going to choose the right ones. And 28. All right, so I now have the word summer. And because I've been saying this so much, I am going to, I'm going to practice this, because I probably won't practice the word fun, but I do want to practice this, because here's the thing is, again, when you're sewing on paper, it's going to move pretty well, but you want to make sure that sometimes I feel like it can twist a little bit. So I want to make sure that my letters, because the letters themselves are going back upon themselves a few different times. And so if I don't watch it, and if I don't take it nice, slow and easy, you can get your letters not to look very nice. So again, slow and easy. I'm watching to make sure everything is aligning. So I want to make sure everything is aligning with my letters. These are not satin stitch letters. So because they're not satin stitch letters, I don't really have to, you know, it's not gonna perforate too much. Yeah. All right. So let's see how we did. I think that looks really nice. So the summer looks great. The other thing that this is great for is you can see where do I have to align this to make sure it is in the proper place on my card. So I'm kind of looking, okay, where do I need to start the word summer? So let's do this. And in this one, it's not super important. I am gonna watch my line on this side. There we go. So one word down. I'm just gonna put fun down here. So I'll just go over here. It won't take me long to do anything. Zoom out just a little bit more. Excuse me. It won't take me long to put in the word fun. Erase what I have. The minute I say that, I know that I will eventually put in a wrong letter. All right. So let's come back. Not gonna decorate, so everyone keep your fingers crossed that I wrote it correctly. I'm gonna do this at a little bit of an angle. Here we go. Just trim those a little bit closer. And then where are we at? Okay, turn that a little bit closer. And everybody in that little amount of time, I mean, if you think about it, you come back here. We've been talking for about 40 minutes. You've heard a lot of different tips and hints, and we've done a few different things. That was super fast to do that little card, right? So it's really, really super easy, fast, fun, kids, you know, again, just be careful if you're letting them use scissors, all that sort of stuff. I wouldn't let them unless they are experienced on a sewing machine. I'd be with them, right? But these are great little things that you can do. What a fun thing if you're like at grandma's house and make a card to go back to mom's, you know, that sort of thing. So, or dad's or whomever. So really easy. There's one other thing I just want to talk with you about, right? So that is the inside of the card, because the inside can be a little messy. I don't, you know, it's a handcrafted card. So for me, I'm not so worried about this, but I know people do not, you know, they want to make their cards nice and neat on the inside. So what I did on these guys is I had an extra envelope, the same color as my card. So I had an extra envelope. So I just cut the envelope apart and actually glued that piece here, so you can't see, right? You can't see all of what I did on the inside of the card. That's one way to do it. If you have a little extra fabric, you could certainly, go ahead and you could stitch around the outside front edge and sew your piece of fabric in there, right? So there are so many great things that you can do. And I see someone said, great for scrapbooking. Wouldn't it be fun to do, a lot of stuff like this for scrapbooking too? There's just so many ideas, so many ways that you can use your sewing machine, especially one like the 6700C, right? That has lots of extra stuff. You could do so much with it. Whether you have a basic machine or a more advanced machine, that it's just so really cool. So, now you guys have got me started. Now I'm like, oh, what's the next one I'm gonna do? What am I gonna try next? All that sort of stuff. So I've been seeing, I think all the questions have been answered as we've been going along. Any other comments or questions? We're gonna close a little bit early unless unless everyone is here, that you don't have any other questions. I guess again, new needle. And that needle should be a little bit smaller. So I would use an 80-12. Lots of different decorative threads. Just pull out what you have. Again, the cards, I saw some, I don't have any here. I saw some at michaels.com that were like an ombre color, just super beautiful. 4th of July, some of the things. So I see what someone asked, what if your machine can't print letters or you're not sewing letters? I'd get a pretty marker and I would just write your sentiment on it. I think it's a really nice way to finish it up. I like to write on the cards as well sometimes rather than sewing. I hear someone asked about the cards, so I'll show this again. But basically, it's free rein, just no satin stitches that are on the cards themselves. So this was one of my first ones, and I think this is the one that we showed in the write-up, or at least partially in the write-up. If you look kind of down at the bottom, a decorative stitch straight across, there's that little strawberry that we just did. I just added a little ribbon up here at the top, right? But I used a decorative stitch to sew down the ribbon. On this one, I did cover the inside, but all I did was I folded over the ribbon and kind of glued it down. So that was one of the first cards we did. This one, I didn't actually talk about this. I'm gonna grab this one too. With this card, I love like making your own decorator fabric, right? So I did like doing that. But I also use, like, if you look here, I use some of the open decorative stitches to sew on my stabilizer there. And it says thank you at the top. I tried this again with thank you at the top. You do have to be aware of your thread color choice. Probably neither one of these were the best color choice. So make sure that's, again, might be a test if you have an extra card, right? So you can do different things like that. So that is one of those. This is the one we did today. Just having a little summer fun with some ribbons and, again, using my fabric and stabilizers to add a different kind of look to it. And finally, I did this one this morning. I actually love this one. There's so much fun with your little pom-poms at the bottom. I don't know if you noticed that there's a little thread spool. That is a stitch on our machine. So that's really kind of fun too. So just different ideas. You can just expand onto so many different things. The cards, I mean, again, Michael's has some beautiful cards you can take advantage of. You want to make, yeah, the pom-poms really do make the card on that one. But you want to make sure you're going to have to practice. So you might end up having a card that, is your practice card, right? So you may end up having something that you're not going to use. So one card is dedicated to trying out different things. So anything else, ladies? I've been kind of watching as the things have been going.
So,
Yeah.
What if somebody used like a free motion foot and then traced over their right?
So Carly had a great question, and you could certainly use a free motion foot and like trace over your own handwriting. The only trick I think with that is you have to be very consistent with your stitch length. So it's going to be a little bit of a practice on that, because if you're free motioning, anyone who has ever free motion before, you kind of know that your stitch length can vary because you're the one that's moving it. So you just have to be a little careful with that, but you could certainly try it, right? That's the fun thing about this. All right, everyone, thank you all for joining. We really appreciate it. And if you're in, basically, if you are in the time in your life that you need a new sewing machine, this is a great one to work with. It's michaels.com, and many Michaels stores will have this. So think about that. And everyone, enjoy your summer, and that's a wrap.